Hi again folks, how's all doing? Well, here's a pretty wee thing. This is an Oxford Rail Adams Radial that was sent to me by a chap called Anthony. He says this is a total non-runner on the track, but if the motor has power applied to it directly, it works. So there's clearly some sort of pickup or electrical issue. Let's just turn on the power. Absolutely nothing. Completely dead. So, nothing for it but to get this into the shed and onto the bench and see if we can figure out what's going on. So I think the 4F will have to be on shunting duty for this again. Alrighty-ho then, so this is my very first Oxford Rail model. Yeah, very nice locomotive, the Adams Radial, and this is a really nice looking model, I think. My only knowledge of Oxford Rail locomotives is what I've seen and read online, and they do seem to get a bit of a mixed bag of reviews. Some people have had issues with theirs, but this looks okay, apart from the fact it doesn't go. So we'll get into it and we'll see what's going on. But Anthony did say if you apply power to the motor does go, which is good to hear. I suspect it's something to do with the DCC gubbins, but we shall see. So, how are we getting into this? We've got two wee screws at the back there, and a little screw at the front that has a nice convenient little hole in the front bogey. Bonus point for Oxford Rail for doing that, because it's always annoying when you've got to try and manipulate around the bogey or remove the bogey just to get the body fixing screw out. But they've got a nice wee hole there. Right, okay, get this into the sponge. And we shall undo these little screws. Ooh, tiny wee screws. Now, just want to check that nothing is attaching the chassis to the body or attaching the valve gear to the body or anything, because come on, out you come. Here we go. Comes out nice and easy. Righty-ho. So there's the DCC socket. It's got a blanking plate, little 5-pole skew-wound motor with a flywheel. One gear's in there. It's all quite simple. Oh, I see a problem though. That looks like that's burnt out. I don't know if you can see that there. I don't know the history of this model, if it has been DCC fitted at some point and it's been removed and someone's put the blanking plate in. Maybe the chip blew and it's damaged the socket with it. Right, let's get a test track. So Anthony is a DC man, so I think what we might do with this is just remove this and wire this up for DC only. Let me just check a couple of things. So there's 4 wires here, 2 black and 2 red, and it's the outer red and black wire that appear to connect to the wheels. And these wires connect to the motor. So there's clearly no connection between that black wire and that black wire, or that red wire and that red wire. And we'll apply power direct to the motor. Yep, it does work. Let's undo that. All the screws are exactly the same size, so that's a bonus. So another good mark for Oxford Rail. Right, let me just remove these 2 screws. Somebody's cutting their grass outside. I don't know if you can hear that. Again, screws exactly the same size, so you don't have to worry about which screw goes where. Alright, okay. So there's little contacts come up through the chassis. There and there. Interesting. What was going on with this? Right, I'm going to need to take the underframe out. I need to get an understanding of where the pickups are coming from. There's pickups on each of those wheels, and there's pickups on these wheels. And there's two contacts under this plate there and two there. Just trying to get my head around how this works. These screws are slightly longer. Is it connected with little? Right, so that means direct contact. Okay. Righto, so the pickups here connect to the contacts there and there, which then connect to the motor. Pickups on the rear wheels connect to the contacts there, which connect to these wires here. This board here feeds power from all four contacts to the socket, and then mysterious things go on with the DCC chip at that end. However, something has happened to this that seems to be blown to me. There's burning there. So I can only assume it's shorting out somewhere. Right, I've been blethering away to myself for the past 15 minutes there. I didn't realise the camera wasn't switched on. I hate it when I do that. So, apologies. Right, okay, I figured this out. Basically, get a pointy thing. So, there's contacts here that connect to the pickups for these wheels, and there's contacts there that pick up from these rear wheels. These wires connect to these contacts and go straight to the motor, but then this board also connects them to these wires, and then these wires were going back to this socket. But, power was not getting to the motor, and I think there's some kind of short circuit in this socket, because I noticed that if I touched the two red wires together, really can't believe I didn't have the camera on record when I was doing this. When I touched those two together, it went. So I've cut the socket out, and I've twisted the red wires together and the black wires together. And that should complete the circuit, and it should go. There you are. Apologies, I didn't film that, but I think you get the idea. Something in there was breaking the circuit. Now, I did think that possibly it was the blanking plate that was faulty, so I actually went and took the blanking plate out of my J36 and tried that, but no, still didn't work. So the problem is definitely in the socket somewhere. Now, obviously, if we wanted this to run on DCC, it would fit a new socket. But Anthony's a DC guy, so he doesn't need that. So all we'll do is we'll tidy that up, insulate those wires, and I think we'll be good to go. I don't think this is going to need much of a service. It all looks fine. We'll put some fresh lubrication in the worm gear, and then we'll see how it goes. Right, what am I doing? I'm going to solder these wires together. That's what I'm going to do once I get some heat shrink on them. Right. Some solder on that. Like so. Now to shrink the heat shrink in this, I would normally use a lighter, but I've found that these tiny little thin wires tend to just melt away when you use that, so we'll just do it with a soldering iron. It doesn't do as good a job of shrinking the heat shrink this, but at least you don't melt the wires either side of it. I think we'll fit this back on just as a means of keeping the wires tidy. Just check again that this works. Okie dokie. Okay. blob of gear oil down in the worm gear. Give the wheels a wee clean. These rods here are quite bent. See if we can straighten them up a bit. Same on this side. And it's just, you tend to pick the locomotive up like that and it bends the rods. You should really try and grab the sides of the body, don't touch the linkages. Right, we'll give the wheels a wee clean. We'll just use some contact cleaner for that. Okay, I think we're done. We'll see if we can get this put back into the body. So I've noticed these pipes kind of in the way of getting this back together. We'll see. That pops in there, okay. Yeah. Oh, these little detail things. Okay. So the pipe on that side. That's one on this side. There we go. There. Now has a rear coupling. Right, okay then. Let's go and pull this out of the shed and give it a run around the layout. Okay then, out she comes. That does seem very slow for full speed. And the front bogey's derailed. Okay, we have issues. The front bogey is just derailing all the time. Coming at the turn of a point or just a tight radius curve and it's derailing. And also it's running very slow. I think this has been geared to run at scale speed, so to speak, but I think it's too slow. But because its slow speed performance is excellent. This thing will crawl like nobody's business. But I'm going to take this back to the bench and have a look at that front bogey and just see if we can figure out why it's coming off all the time. Okay, so I've had a look at this front bogey. It's very light, it's just made of plastic, which isn't good, but I don't think that's the problem. I think the problem is it's held on with this tiny little screw, and that's it. So there's absolutely no downward force on it, and nothing to stop it rocking about in all directions. You want it to move from side to side, and you want it to rotate, but you don't want it rocking about. And I think that's what's happening. There's just far too much movement. Also, the wheels are dangerously, when it's turning, the wheels are dangerously close to the cylinders, and the rear wheels here are almost hitting the valve gear. But no, I'm pretty sure it just has far too much movement. So what I'm going to try, I've got some tiny wee washers here, and I've fitted 2 into the recess in the chassis here. Just pure luck that they fit absolutely perfectly. And I'm going to fit some more of these little washers onto the shaft of the screw, and hopefully that'll act like a kind of bush. If I had a little bit of tubing the right thickness, and I would cut it and that would maybe work, but the washers should work fine. So there's my little washers fitted on the screw, and hopefully That will be sufficient. Have I got that the right way around? Yes, I have. Hopefully that will be sufficient to restrict the movement enough so that this front bogey behaves itself. Where's my wee screwdriver? What have I done with it? There it is. Yeah, I think that'll maybe make it rotate a bit smoother. Because the problem has been it's just sitting on the rails and there's no actual downward pressure on it from the locomotive. Sometimes I've seen, like a copper spring or something to, just give a little bit downward force. It really needs something like that. But hopefully these washers will fix it. Another thing I'm going to do is these two rear wheels I noticed were sometimes not turning. They're barely touching the track. So I'm just going to back off. There's two little screws here to hold this plate in to keep the wheels on. I think if I just back them off a bit, it'll just allow the wheels to drop down just a fraction. Yeah, okay, and hopefully that'll work okay. Right, okay, let's go and stick this back on the layout and see if that front bogey's behaving itself. Okay, out she comes again. So it was derailing in reverse over this point. Let's see what happens. It's better. We'll try it going through these points. It was derailing quite badly here, so let's see what happens. That's better. So yeah, just stabilising that front bogey has done the trick. Okay, so I've fixed the electrical problem that was stopping this from running. I've sorted the front bogey so it doesn't derail so easily. I've adjusted the rear wheels so they make proper contact with the track. But this thing is running way too slow. Now this thing is advertised as being geared to run at a slow and prototypical speed, but no, it's too slow and it's actually slowing down. That's full power now, so there's clearly a problem with it. So either something's impeding the motor or the motor's dying. So I think I'll get this back to the bench, open it up, take the motor out and clean out the gearbox. And see if I can get this to run. I'm not sure how available Oxford Rail motors are, so we'll need to do some digging around there. So I'm going to make this a two-part video. We'll call this the end of part 1, and in part 2 we'll strip this down, clean it out, and see if we can free it up to make it run at a proper speed. Righty-ho, I'll catch you later.